Dear friends, today we are here to discuss a very interesting development. We have seen a number of Indian cabinet ministers who have visited Australia in the recent past. Just last month, we had Minister Nitin Gadkari, and before that, India's Foreign Minister Dr. Jaishankar, who were in Australia. And so the question arises that why is there such a flurry of activity suddenly with so many cabinet ministers coming to Australia in the recent past? To discuss this and to begin this discussion, we have with us very eminent Indian journalist, Mr. R. Rajagopalan, who is currently visiting Australia. We also have editors of the Australia Today, Jitarth, Bharadwaj, and Dr. Amit Sarwal. Good morning, everyone. And I would like to start with you, Mr. Rajagopalan, that in your assessment, why are we seeing such a flurry of activities at a political level? I mean, ministers have been coming to Australia and, from here going there, but suddenly 5, 6 ministers in the last 5, 6 months. So what's really happening?
Good morning to you, Pallavi, and also my regards and respects to Mr. Amit and Jay. Jay and me have been in Indian Parliament, Indian media for longer years. Jay knows me very well, and Mr. Amit, I'm happy to join you. With this, I would like to say important 2, 3 points, which I would leave it to the wisdom and articulation of Australia Today viewers. Australia Today is doing a wonderful job. During the corona crisis, Indian media picked up Australia Today's, bites and Amit, Jay's, Pallavi's comments like that. So you are very popular in India. With that, welcome note, I would like to say Australia-India relations and its growth. It is after Mr. Anthony Albanese took over on May 22nd, 2022, the first meeting of Mr. Narendra Modi and Albanese at the Quad Summit happened, and in Japan, and subsequently coming back to India after a week's time, there was a high-level cabinet committee on security meeting held in India. So May onwards to November, in these 6 months, there are 8 ministers visited Australia. I know at a gap of 2 weeks, 3 weeks like that. Apart from that, there are cultural teams have also come. There are cricket teams coming. There are industry teams coming. So therefore, India attaches much significance to India-Australia relationship and its growth. Why 8 ministers? Pallavi asked me a question. The answer is it is the decision of the highest body of the Indian government, that is cabinet. The reason being, we want to have a very good relationship with Mr. Anthony Albanese's government. That is the reason why after meeting the Prime Minister, the newly elected Prime Minister, he has not even taken oath at that time, Mr. Anthony. And Anthony and Mr. Modi relationship was, very interesting thing. 1.5 hours they spent, that's what I heard. And the debriefing by the Prime Minister and the External Affairs Minister and the team and the delegation to Indian government was so encouraging that Mr. Albanese was wanting to have a very continued relationship what Mr. Scott Morrison left it. And to ensure that, to have that, Mr. Piyush Goyal and Dan pact, thanks to Mr. Albert's efforts, yes. So Daniel, and with that pact was to be given an authorization by Anthony Albanese government and also by Indian government. The changeover in Australia, of course, for the Indian government also. So Mr. Narendra Modi decided to send his top ministers to Australia. And what I was given to understand by the my sources is very interesting. If I narrated that, Australia Today viewers will also be a little enlightened on that. Mr. Modi decided on 2 important things. Quad was his main, impression on his mind. Second, the continued relationship with, what Mr. Scott Morrison left. Even during 1 or 2 meetings, they used to say Sam Morrison and, Narendra Modi, they used to have a samosa type of, lighter vein comments. So continuing that with Mr. Albanese, Mr. Narendra Modi decided on two important things, Mr. Amit. One, why we should have more, interference of a third country in Quad. And that is, they focused it exactly on China. It is my understanding that Mr. Narendra Modi has, succeeded in somehow convincing Mr. Anthony Albanese, the Prime Minister of Australia, to take an independent position, whether it is elections, whether it is, immigration or migration, or for that matter, industries, or for that matter, even the real estate properties. The China's influence on Australia is immense. They grade out of 100, 65 to 70% of influence. So these are all certain things which impacted Mr. Narendra Modi and Albanese talks that succeeded. They decided, and the formulation was done at the highest level to send naval chief to Australia, because the Quad, whatever the decisions were taken by Mr. Albanese and Modi's meeting, the first priority was to strengthen our naval forces. Second, education. Therefore, Dharmendra Pradhan. Third, G20 and other conferences are going to be held in India in 2023, and Mr. Albanese is also visiting 2 times to India, March and November. That's what informally the diplomats conveyed to me. And to prepare that, a documents and also a base and also a cordiality, 8 ministers were sent, Pallavi. To answer your question, this is the elaboration. During our future question answer, I will give you more.
Yeah. Thank you so much for introducing the discussion, Mr. Rajagopalan. Jay, I would like to come to you. You are an expert in this area. You're a keen observer of India-Australia relations, especially in the political and economic space. So what do you make of this? Have you seen this kind of hectic activity between the two countries ever before?
Thank you, Pallavi. I'll probably second what Mr. Rajagopalan has said. I haven't seen, this is unprecedented time in terms of, if you talk about Australia-India relationship. We saw something happening around 9 years back. However, that was installed by different reasons. It has just come back again, and it has come back with all the other ingredients which are required to enhance a relationship between two countries. If you see the global atmosphere, global compulsions for two countries, it has been pointed towards a single country, China. India and Australia both have some issues in terms of business and in terms of their safety and security, and the concerning nation is China. So this unique condition brings Australia and India on the table to discuss various issues. However, issues cannot be dealt with without one important factor in life, that is economy. Unless you are economically sound or economically secure, you can't talk about other things. So Australia and India both have realized, and because of China, there is a kind of a vacuum in terms of Australian resources going to certain places and being processed. India has proposed and has come out very strongly as a position country which is in the same geographical location almost. If we can talk about China and India, maybe better than China when we talk about exporting those processed resources to the global customers. So this made Australia understand that yes, if we want to have somebody lessen our dependence on China, then India is the place to go. Yeah. India has also understood, we talked about this 10 years back, that business should invest in India and blah, blah, blah. But you know what? What has changed in 2022 is not the big business of Australia or big companies of Australia who are going to India and investing. It's the other way around. I am so surprised, happily surprised to see that the business growth incoming towards Australia from India, the partnership collaborations and the buyers are on much higher trajectory than what we would have expected. And I would have thought that big Australian business who are moneyed and have good resources, technology, they'll go to India. However, Indians are coming to Australia and drawing the partnerships, writing those contracts, and growing their business in terms of South Asia, in terms of Africa, and in terms of a lot of Eastern Europe. So they have designed it differently. I see the growth between India and Australia relationship is, of course, political parties, political governance has to back it up, but it will be more or less in next 5 years driven by the economy. Pallavi?
Okay. Now, Amit, I want to come to you. Jay is talking about the economy, and of course, that's a very important part. But do you reckon it's, are these compulsions, or would you say that given that both India and Australia are secular democracies, and it is a well-known fact that no two secular democracies have gone to war after the Second World War, and that besides, maybe just interests, whether they're economic or political, that there is a realization in both the countries that they are natural allies, and that this is going to be a multifaceted, or that this should be a multifaceted relationship. Do you think that both the countries are at that stage where they're ready to take off with this relationship, or is this still more a peripheral sort of a relationship that because you have certain consideration in the Indo-Pacific, that's why it's more like, it's not that in-depth as yet?
Yeah. Thanks, Pallavi. I think both Mr. Rajagopalan and Jay covered very important points. And in terms of your question, there are three aspects that we need to look at. One, obviously, that Australia and India are not just secular democracies, but very strong secular democracies in the region. If you compare, some of the other countries, there have been political turmoil in South Asian countries, Pakistan, Sri Lanka, Bangladesh. These countries are trying hard, but they cannot be trusted, right? So because of their political environment, given the impact of China on these countries as well. So one, obviously, that India is a very strong secular democracy. And since 2014, under Narendra Modi, it has proved beyond doubt that India will remain a very strong democratic country. The second, obviously, if you look at Quad and other things that have been, it's a Western countries are known to form alliances based on their own profits and greed, right? So they never think in terms of Vasudev Kutumbakam, the Indian philosophy. World is one family. India has, since independence and before independence, been thinking about, even when we were a colonial state, you can see that Indian independence compared to African countries has been almost bloodless independence, right? So we give credit to Gandhi for independence. It was a non-violent movement. If you compare it to African countries, they're still going through that phase. Even after independence, they are not stable, most of the countries. So one thing is that Western idea of diplomacy has always been based on their own profits. Unlike India, in 2016, I pointed out that under Modi and even before Modi, there were some aspects. India believed in Paraspara diplomacy. This is the term I coined in 2016. Paraspara diplomacy is basically mutually reciprocal diplomacy based on dosti, which now Australian High Commission, Indian High Commission in Australian and Indian government are tweeting. So that was the idea. If you are my friend, you are my friend, and I'll follow you. You're a friend indeed, right? So that's the other thing, that India has always been a beneficial and trusted partner countries for any ally, be it Ukraine, Russia. They are fighting each other, but India has no sides. You can see that and India has been trying to ask Western countries to solve their problems through mutual dialogue, as India has been doing through, right? So this is the second thing, that India wants respect. In 2022, the game has changed. India is no longer your emerging country. It's not just a third world country. It's a country that deserves respect because of our intellectual, manufacturing, IT, and other powers. Third, between Australia and India, the third important aspect that many people forget is the strong diaspora. Indian diaspora in Australia, unlike UK, Canada, or USA, is a skilled diaspora. It is based on skilled migration. Since Indian independence, particularly after 1970s, it's doctors, engineers, ITs, professors, educated students. Even if they are driving taxis, working at McDonald's, have their own business, they have some or other form of higher Australian degree in their pocket. They are accountants, managers, right? So this diaspora today is 780,000 strong. In the last 5 years, I think 63,000 children have been born to just Indian ancestry parents here. So you can imagine that Australian census says that by 2035, Indian diaspora, or people who identify with Indian heritage, would be 1.08 million strong. I think we would cover that even before 2035. So we don't have to wait till 2035. So it is this diaspora that Jay pointed out, who's going back home and bringing business here, right? So it's not just Anglo-Australian companies or say non-Indian owned companies. It is very much Indian owned companies, Indian consultants who are going back home and telling about this place, the great vast land about Australia. And the business is not just in terms of IT. I'm surprised that it's in wines, it is in agriculture, it is in fertilizing. So it's in vehicle manufacturing, chips, everything. So Indians are everywhere at this stage, and this is what is driving Australia-India relations, and this is what will drive Australia-India's growth in near future. Thanks.
Thank you, Amit, for that. So basically, you are also, highlighting the role of the diaspora, and that this kind of engagement is because the diaspora is skilled, and because of that people-to-people contact and things like that. Mr. Rajagopalan, I would like to come back to you. That at a political level, what is the thinking in India now? Of course, it's very clear that Australia is is seen as a friend, is seen as a partner, but are there any specific reasons why suddenly there is so much focus which is being given by both countries, with as you mentioned that Prime Minister Albanese is going to go to India, before that Prime Minister Modi is going to come to Australia. Are there any particular reasons why we are seeing this, or is it just a natural progression of where things have been for the past couple of years?
Pallavi, we four are political reporters, political correspondents, political analysts. To answer your question, it is politics. The politics being the tall leadership of Mr. Narendra Modi. After 2019, the world has seen how Mr. Narendra Modi implemented 370 abrogation in Kashmir. And that gave a leadership at the international level. Because at international fora, the issue of letter K is silenced. So with that, even Mr. Albanese would have understood the tallness of Mr. Narendra Modi's diplomacy, ably supported by his Council of Ministers. That resulted in the efforts of Mr. Narendra Modi past 8 years as Prime Minister, 12 years as Chief Minister. Even as Chief Minister, he was playing a very key role in China, Japan, Australia, like that. He was traveling all over the world even as a Chief Minister. Therefore, 22 years of diplomacy of Mr. Narendra Modi, culminated in 2023, which is going to be a SCO, Shanghai Cooperation Organization meeting to be held in various parts of India. Second important thing is G20 is going to meet in India at various levels, at various points, at various places. Apart from that, recently United Nations Security Council subcommittee high-level meeting was held in Mumbai. And what does it mean with these three? And moreover, as Mr. Amit pointed out, economy. In the Indian context, the world over, India has overtaken even UK's economy. We came number 5th in the IMF ratings. So what does it indicate? The World Bank appreciated the demonetization and also the digital transaction. I'm happy to share with Australia Today viewers that day before yesterday, India introduced e-rupee, digital rupee. So these are all certain aspects where Mr. Albanese also understands that he is a partner country, and effectively both the high commissions in Delhi as well as in Canberra, they are supplementing or complementing the efforts of both the governments, especially the Indian New Delhi Australian High Commissioner is very, very active, Mr. Ball. And in Delhi also we are taking a very holistic approach about Australia. Having said these things, now coming to the real politics of it, it is Mr. Narendra Modi who could lift the Sri Lankan economy by paying to them as 45,000 crore rupees. I don't know how million or billion it comes to in the international terminology. Therefore, Mr. Modi lifted the poverty level, the insolvency level of the Sri Lanka. Having helped Sri Lanka, my fear, and also there are certain tasks given to National Security Advisory Board and National Security Advisory Council, what India analyzes the global and international spheres, where they also apprehend there is a image building up Indian diplomats at the New Delhi level, South Bloc, that there is an apprehension that in another 10 years to 15 years, Australia should have its continued economy and it should not derail and it should not go the way of Sri Lanka, where Prime Minister Narendra Modi is going to help. How he helped the Sri Lanka. Now, Australia is also, Mr. Narendra Modi is helping because he should not get into the trap of a country which is wanting that Australia to go into insolvency. So therefore, these are all international geopolitical aspects. My quiet understanding of this is, quietly India has engaged itself by sending lots of its representatives, ministers level, diplomats level, army chief level, that is naval chief level to Australia. Means politically, I think it is somehow effectively de-link Australia and China. That is how I could, narrate my points. I leave the floor to Mr. Jai, who is my dear friend. We call him as Panditji in India. So Panditji, aap le liya. मैं बहुत बोल दिया.
Sir, I have a simple question to you. We have seen these a lot of ministers, as you pointed out, have come to Australia, but the way decision making or the way the results we would have driven, we are unable to see those. There is some hurdles somewhere, and it's not public as yet, so can't talk much about it, but there is some hurdle. Is it because India is demanding too much right now?
I don't think so. India does not demand anything. India always gives. It does not demand. And the second thing, Jai, my understanding is it's one-sided love. A male is loving a female and the female is not returning the love to the male. Simple as that. We expect more from Australia, very, very diplomatically saying that we expect more affections and love from Australia to India's side, whereas India has overshown its, over-expressed its affections towards Australia. Still, India believes that there is a connection between Australia and the adversary country, and where we have to play a crucial role. Now it is highest summit level meetings to be held in February, March. We leave it to the knowledgeable diplomats and who does this type of track to diplomacy also on that. Coming to the point of diaspora, which Mr. Amit just now mentioned, The 3 points during my 2 month stay, which I noticed, I also addressed some 5-6 meetings. Mr. Jain knows about it. Pallavi knows about it. Amit knows about it. And I could get a feedback which I carry home to India is Australians are very much interested in having a relationship with India, continued relationship. Now, the diaspora is playing a crucial part as a political observer, as a political commentator. I would also say that wherever Mr. Modi went, he did not have a closed door meeting with the diaspora. He enlarged it like a Sydney Stadium, Melbourne Stadium, like that. He made 50-60,000 people to attend. He made it like a Ramlila ground India type of meetings. So therefore he enlarged it. Indian diaspora is playing two-way, beneficial politics towards one, ensuring that Australia economy is, given a fillip. Second, back home, the entire diaspora, whatever the numbers Mr. Amit counted just now, into two, whatever 7.8 million, whatever he said, into two means those things are votes for Mr. Narendra Modi in 2024. So Modi is a person who makes crisis into an opportunity. Whatever is happening with Australia and India now, I don't think this crisis is a very an amicable relationship is taking place. There are heartburns between the two countries or certain areas where Australia should not be misused its land for anti-India propaganda. Similarly, India does not do that.
Yeah.
Keeping these things in mind, the end of this month, Indian Parliament is going to open for winter session. I am sure there will be a debate on Indo-Australia relationship because Mr. Jaishankar is going to make an official statement about his 5-day stay. It's not 1 or 2 days. 5 days means immense, Pallavi. In diplomacy, it's only 24 hours, whereas he stayed here for 120 hours. So
Sir, that includes New Zealand also.
Yeah, New Zealand also. New Zealand and Australia, they combine always, So therefore, my reading and conclusion points are 1 or 2 very effectively. India is looking very hopefully for the better relationship with Australia. And thanks to Australia today, this e-platform, what we are having a debate, let Australian authorities understand the Indian minds also. I reflect the Indian minds, Indian diplomats, Indian media, that Australia should also come forward for more handshake with India. It should not be a one-way love, my understanding.
Yeah. Mr. Rajagopalan, you touched upon a very interesting point about the Indian mindset and, various summits taking place. And I assume that you have worked with a lot of Indian intellectuals and journalists who have been anti-BJP, anti-Modi, and right. So we have we have nothing against them. But at some point, in last month we published. We were kind of surprised by Western ranking, human rights ranking, and freedom index published somewhere in Europe, I think. And we asked a professor here, what's going on. And Professor Salvatore Babanese, who's a very well-known professor in Sydney, he's right now attending the India Today conclave. And we published his piece that it is Indian intellectuals who are poisoning the reputation of India outside. Now, you have spent, not just this time, but you have been a very regular person who has been traveling abroad, and you have been interacting with diaspora. Your family lives abroad as well in Australia. And you have interacted with people in Sydney, Melbourne. So there is this constant thing. There are two narratives building up. One narrative is that tries to push back India into the dark ages, as if India is a fascist country where if you move on the road, you will be lynched anytime. And the other narrative, which people can believe, is because so many companies, so many state governments, state premiers, state ministers, not just from Australia, from other parts of the world, are also going to India to do business. Apple has just moved its manufacturing unit from China to Chennai. And on the other hand, you have the other narrative, which is a very positive one taking place. And Professor Babanese said that it is not Indian intellectuals as individuals, but when they come as collective, they start harming the reputation of India. Do you think he's right? Is there some
Absolutely,
kind
he's
of
right.
peer pressure?
Absolutely, he's 100% right. I give 10% extra also. He's 120% right. The reason being, we have wire disconnected. We have, scroll disconnected. We have, mojo journalists. These are all certain narratives which we don't want to discuss as a journalist. We four are journalists, and I have covered 45 years the Indian Parliament. Jay knows about it, and no ill words, mild words about our own colleagues. But there are narratives set up by own Rana Ayubs and Siddharth Vardharajans. Very sorry to state that, but they are being taught a lesson by the people of India. 2019 is a cakewalk for Mr. Narendra Modi, and extending that, despite negative propaganda, intolerance by Bollywood actors, they said much more damaging statements than journalists. Bollywood played a very negative role. After that, there are very well-known cine hero and heroines. I don't want to take the names. They also said they are intolerant, and they joined JNU camp and created havoc in JNU. These are all certain, Bollywood
Sir,
actors.
I'll interrupt you for a second. Mr. Amit Sarwal is also a product of Genio. He also looks one of them, I suppose.
हमेशा जय कुछ ना कुछ टोकता है मुझे हमेशा टोकता है वो. Amit is an exception. It's an exception in JNU. I would say that. So with that, my understanding of 2 months stay, Australia should have more handshakes with India. That is one minus point which I feel, Mr. Amit. I may be very crude in saying that. Let Albanese understand what Indian sentiments are through this video.
Jay, I wanted to make a point that although the term intellectuals is being used, but I would, as I always say, that I would say that they're pseudo-intellectuals. Not everyone. I mean, people can have differing opinions. That is not an issue. But when you create fake narratives to push a certain kind of propaganda, then you're certainly not an intellectual. And, just because you self-proclaim yourself to be an intellectual, you don't become one. It's basically others who have to say that you're an intellectual. So I would make that distinction here, that people can have any point of view. That's what democracy is. It's not about one party or one ideology. But when you disregard data and when you start pushing your own opinion as facts, you are a pseudo-intellectual. And we are seeing at a global scale, not just with India, we are seeing this very dangerous trend around the world where things are getting polarized and opinions are being pushed as facts. So I just wanted to...
Pallavi, I don't want to budge in. As Amit just now, he budged in my conversation. I'm also budging into his conversation. Things are moving very fast in India. Please don't have that impression. Don't have that impression. The journalists of my era and Jai Bharadwaj Panditji's era are more now. Enough. Now youngsters are coming. Now my younger generation has taken over. They understand the international diplomacy very well, better than Rajagopalan and Jai. Second thing, now world is moving fast. Ignore that Indian pseudo secularist or pseudo journalist, pseudo whatever you may name themselves. Today, as we speak, Israel and Pakistan are having dialogue. Israel and UAE are having dialogues. Why do we forget those things? These are all certain lessons. The diplomats in Australia should take cognizance of it and understand India is for Australia. Jai Hind bolte hain, Jai Australia bhi bolte hain.
Pallavi, I don't have anything to add, but I want to put it to record that I am not of Rajagopalan sir's age. Okay, I am much more younger. I'm still learning. I'm very young, and I have to work at least for 20 more years. No, I'm nowhere. I was like a kid when Rajagopalan sir were working in the parliament.
Thank you, Jay. Thank you, Jay. हमेशा आप मुझे टोकते ही जय. दिल्ली में भी, ऑस्ट्रेलिया में भी मुझे क्यों टोकते हो?
Pallavi?
Yeah, and Amit, I think let's have a concluding comment. So I would first like to ask Amit that just to go, do you reckon that the Australia-India relationship can be de-linked with everything else that's happening, and one can really build on a strong bilateral relationship, maybe even independent of the Quad, or maybe independent of the larger geopolitical structure? Or you think that there is going to be time before we reach that kind of a situation between the two countries?
Thank you, Pallavi, and thank you, Mr. Rajagopalan, for your insightful comments today. One of the things I've been pointing out throughout my academic career as well is that Australia-India relations is built on waves, right? Either it's waves of economic liberalization in India or migration patterns in Australia. So it's based on waves or geopolitical effects, say China, what's happening in Europe. So it's always very wavy. And till 1970s and 1980s, we had no idea that we had a relation with Australia, right? We had no idea that Australia existed apart from cricket. If you asked anyone in India, even now, if you ask someone in India what's the capital of Australia, they'll say Melbourne or Sydney, the two most popular cities. No one will say Canberra. That's the image of Australia. It's only after Julia Gillard, Kevin Rudd and others came. With Kevin Rudd, it was more China, not India. It's only with Scott Morrison, Tony Abbott and Scott Morrison, that we truly started engaging with each other. So we don't, to answer your question, we don't need Quad or anything else to be partners with. Australia-India relations actually works well on one-to-one friendship, dosti. So we don't need any other person to arrange our relationship. Historians have also pointed out that the earliest phases of indigenous or aboriginal migration took place via India and Sri Lanka, which were at that point of time one Indian subcontinent. So our relations is based on a very strong DNA, and that drives our relations, and that will drive our growth. Thank you.
And Jay, would like to ask you lastly, you spoke about economy and the importance of an economic relationship. As we know that the economic relationship is still hovering around, $25-30 billion, the bilateral trade, which for both countries is not that high. And as Minister Piyush Goyal had mentioned, that the aspiration is that in the coming years, it should reach at least around $50 billion. So where do you see that going? Is it more very superficial level things are happening, or you see a deeper engagement that things will pick up in the coming years?
Pallavi, thank you. My pure understanding is build on what Amit is saying, people to people dosti relationship. The economic relationship between two countries will take that dosti and people to people connection to next level. There is always a limitation between what a people to people relationship can do. However, the growth and the potential and limitation of business is kind of sky. And believe me, what Piyush Goyal has estimated will be dropped in next 5 to 10 years. My estimation, as I'm seeing the real work being done between Indian business houses and even those whose name probably most prominently are not flashed in newspapers and business channels, they are coming to Australia and doing things differently, and the result will come out as the growth pattern says in terms of business. It is the third business year when you will see the reflection. So what I am expecting is 2025 to 28 will be the golden period for growth in terms of business, the result growth in terms of business. That's what my estimation is. And I'll always push people to people education. Everything is fantastic, but push for the business relationship. It will drive the politics. It will drive people. It will drive everything. Thank you, Pallavi.
And Mr. Rajagopalan, we'll come lastly to you. But we would like you to comment on the economic part of it, and also just lastly that there was a time like when in India, generally people when they thought about abroad or going to some other country, it would be UK, US, or Canada. Do you think now that Australia is also, has reached that place for the Indian diaspora when they are looking to venture out, or is it still down on the list?
No, no, it's a first on the list, not down on the list. There are 20 to 25 relatives of mine are in various parts of Australia. So what does it indicate? I go with Mr. Amit saying that Indian diaspora played a very crucial role. I have relatives in Brisbane, Perth, Adelaide, and then Melbourne, like that. So second, as Mr. Amit and Panditji narrated, ECTA, Economic Cooperation Agreement. Though Ekta means unity. And second thing, Paraspar, what the word coined by Mr. Amit is very interesting. And top of that, Paraspar. Paraspar is, people to people. Paraspar contact is a Tamil word, actually Sanskrit, and it adopted by Tamil. We speak very often Paraspar. So, Amit, you coined a very interesting, today debates gave me one new word, Paraspar. And second thing, people to people contact, as Pallavi mentioned, is now increasing. Very day by day, it is increasing. In my 4 or 5 interactions with a lot of Indians, South Indians, Tamil, Telugu, Kannada, Malayalam, Odia, Rajasthanis, Haryanvis, what does, it indicate? I carry message home, back home, saying that Indians are doing best for Australia and Australia should reciprocate it.
Yeah, and Jay, I would like to conclude by saying that the Indian diaspora here, the contributions they're making to Australia, we have seen a lot of ministers also acknowledge that among the highest paying, tax paying diaspora Indians are also quite highly educated, and as Jay, as you've mentioned that they're also driving in a sense the people to people contact, and it's not just about Australia investing in India. We are seeing a lot of Indians who are showing interest in investing in Australia across various sectors. And also we have ourselves covered first generation immigrants or second generation Indian Australians who have done extremely well in businesses. So I think overall one can say that things are looking positive, and let's see where the Australia India relationship goes.
Thank you.